Every week, this congregation reads a covenant that includes a line that inspired this next piece. And service is its prayer. In the few months I've been with you, I see that you all pray a lot in that fashion. But I'm going to use my prerogative as the director of religious education to lift up one specific group, because that's my job, but then also honor the many other ways that people serve here. So I'd like to tell you the names of the people who have been teaching and leading in religious education classes this year. And I'm going to name them specifically because sometimes you don't see them here because they're somewhere else on Sunday morning instead of sitting here with you. So I'd like to lift up their names if they are here, and I realize it's a holiday weekend, so they may not be, but if they're here, and I call out your name, and if I do it anywhere close to the right way, if you could just raise your hand so people could see who you are. Carol Fristinsky. Hi, Carol. She's also teaching our kids to sing some songs and do some ASL. Carolyn Lace. There she is. Hi, Carolyn. David Weisbecker and Renee Weisbecker. Bev Coakley. Wait, I know she's here. Oh, wait, there she is. Byron Peebles. Megan Wood. Cheryl Folk. Parker Collins. Ava Absher-Shantz, Oscar Castro, Oscar, Claire Brolin, Dale Peebles, here's Dale, Locke Walton, our tech support guy, Chris Edwards, who keeps track of our data for us. From our Whole Lives team, we offered the 10th through 12th grade level this year. Some of those names are going to be familiar. David Bender, Parker Collins, and Claire Brolin. And the Lifespan Spiritual Growth Council, who held this container this year. Carolyn Lace, Marty Breddick, Jill Russo-Downey, Laurie Connor, Catherine Fogden, Claire Brolin, Bev Coakley, and Anais Joubert, who was our youth representative this year. Without them, those marvelous things, oh my goodness. Without then those marvelous things that the children will tell you about if you ask them, do not happen. Teaching religious education not only supports the spiritual growth of the children and youth here at MVUC, teaching religious education will broaden and deepen your own journey into Unitarian Universalism. If you have ever thought of working with this vital ministry, talk to me about assisting this summer, getting a little taste. Working with a team in the fall. We don't do this alone. We do this in community and together. Ask about the experience of current teachers, too, who can tell you the joys and the sorrows of teaching. I taught for a long time before I became a director of religious education. And one of my greatest joys was probably my 5th year as a director of religious education. I was working with a group of children from kindergarten through 4th grade. And there's a lot of energy. Fortunately, by this time, I learned about energy management and dispersal. And the thing that happened, though, is we always closed our time together with some type of meditation. So I got to teach some meditation. We did some movement meditation. We did some sitting meditation. We did some breathing meditation. And I introduced this wonderful meditation from Thich Nhat Hanh, the teacher. That was a 4-pebble meditation. It has a very specific structure, and you get to hold some shiny pebbles, which all to the good, right? Little things to hold. And when I said, okay, let's gather for our meditation circle, one child said, can we do the pebble meditation? Well, of course we could. You asked for that, absolutely. Friends, there were 15 children in this room from kindergarten through 4th grade. Some of them whose favorite thing to do was run around the room. And they all sat. And they chose their little pouch of 4 pebbles and held them like precious things. And we sat together and we did 1 pebble at a time from one hand to the other. Quietly, with attention and intention. And you could feel the peace in that room. And that is why I do this work. Come join us. I don't want anyone to feel left out, so if you have not yet experienced the joys and sorrows of leading a religious education class at whatever level, you have still served this congregation, because I know that. So let's take that metaphor of helping hands to its utmost extreme and start with the ever popular and necessary opposable thumb. So, if you have, in this past year, taken on a leadership role, whether it's the board or saying yes to coordinating a one-time project like, oh, say the auction, just that little thing, the plant sale or the book sale or the holiday shop, if you said yes, I'll do that, I'll coordinate that, you are a thumb, my friend. Okay, so remember that. Okay, so there's the thumbs. For the fingers, all of them, not any one, because we need them all. And we know what happens when you only use one. Those who said, yes, I can help with that. You're going to move the books? Awesome, we need that many people. Or set up the tables, or I have an idea how we could do that. Or if you ushered, or stacked chairs, or greeted, or organized and staffed the holiday shop, or cleaned up at any event, even if it was just taking your own plate to the kitchen. If you made chutney or brownies or coffee, you, my friend, are the fingers. All right, there you are. And then we come to the palms. So I'm going to cup them like this. I always think of palms like this. Those who nourish body and soul, those who do nursery or child care, who are on the care team, the coffee hour teams, the meditators, who sing or provide beautiful music, the things that really touch us deep inside. You, my friend, are part of the palms. Some of you will have more than one role, and you know what? That's okay. But I want right now all of you who have done any of these things to proudly lift your helping hands and show your thumbs and your fingers or your palms, however you want to show what you did this year. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Look at that. That's beautiful. Everybody at home, did you see that? Want to see yours too? Did you see that? Did you see the number of helping hands right here in this room? Thank you for all that you do and all that you will do. I know, I don't let you off the hook. Thus ends our ritual of honoring the helping hands. Thank you. And here begins another story. It's still my mic. I had a great Uncle Mike. He was my great uncle. I only called him Uncle Mike because after about 3 times, great Uncle Mike is too much for little people. My great Uncle Mike served in the Army during World War II. Now, Uncle Mike didn't talk about his service, at least not with me, and not with my mom. He may have talked with my dad a little bit about it. They shared service in common. But I did know that he was in the Army and that he was a cook in the Army. And we know that the Army and just about any other service branch needs those people to keep going. So he was really proud of his time as a cook in the Army in Europe. I have one photo of him in his Army uniform. He is standing on the plaza in front of the Eiffel Tower in Paris in his Army uniform. It all still stands right there. And 50 years later, I stood on that same spot with the Eiffel Tower over my shoulder, not in uniform except my tourist clothes, and took the same photo. Here's the other thing about Uncle Mike. He was a first-generation American. Both his parents came over from Lithuania. His mother never learned to speak English, so she did have a community. There was a large Lithuanian community in Baltimore at that time. But Uncle Mike, as a young person, would have had to translate for her sometimes and do a lot of the grocery shopping and things. They arrived on these shores in the early 20th century. I had to correct myself. I almost said 19th, and I remembered what that was. And so it was in the 1900s that they came over. Uncle Mike was born in a row house in Baltimore, and he lived there his entire life until he could no longer navigate the stairs, and he and his wife had to move to assisted living. When Mike came home from the Army, he served in a different way, as a postman. He worked as a postman the entire rest of his working life, walking in Baltimore, delivering mail, checking in on people. He lived a life of service. My Aunt Helen also served because people who have family members who are in any of the armed services, they also serve. It's a totally different way, but the folks who remain home also have jobs to do to keep things going. So Aunt Helen also worked their whole married life in the same office in Baltimore. That kind of thing doesn't happen so very often anymore. Now, I have that connection with the Army. My dad was in the Air Force, so I grew up moving around up and down the East Coast. We never went too much further than that. But it turns out my spouse was also in the Air Force. And now my youngest son is also in the Air Force. The fact that my feet are still on the ground is kind of a miracle to me in that way. But I remember growing up how my mom had to hold the household together anytime my dad had to go. And he had to go. When you called, you went. So what I remember of my dad is mostly his uniform stuff, trying on his big shiny shoes. And my favorite was the winter coat that he was issued. which would have kept you warm no matter what, but it was big enough to come down to my ankles, and my hands weren't visible, and when you pulled the hood the whole way up and zipped it, it was like a tunnel in front of your face, and our dog barked at me because it didn't know who I was. So I don't have a lot of memories of Air Force life per se, because that was tangential to my existence. We often lived off base. But I know that we were a military family. It's likely that almost everyone in this room has some connection to military service in some way, whether you served yourself, whether a spouse or a family member did, or an uncle or it's somewhere. The Department of Defense's financial report for fiscal year 2020 says that there were more than 2.1 million service members and over 770,000 civilian employees, making the military in the United States one of the largest employers of all. Now, to that number, add in all the non-military support services, all those family members who are keeping things going at home when the service members may be away. The teachers at the schools on or near bases, the librarians, the chaplains and therapists and counselors and physical therapists and rehabilitation folks. Oh, so many people. There's a reason it's all called the military-industrial complex. It is widespread and deeply embedded in our nation. It made me think a little bit about whatever latest big blockbuster movie is out there that has lots of special effects and stuff, but what you see is the amazing actors doing amazing things and leaping and blah, blah, blah. And then did you ever sit and watch all the credits roll by on all that? Somebody colored in a dot and they got their name on the list. That's awesome. So many hands to support and create. So I started wondering then, is church like a movie then? Granted, a lot of those other roles that get done are not paid like the movie folks are paid, but sometimes what we see the most is what happens up here on Sunday morning. But there's a lot that goes on to make Sunday morning happen, right? There's a lot that goes on to make that auction happen before that auction happens. They're the helping hands. So take a moment here. I want you to share with someone near you how you used your helping hands here at MVUC this year. Can you share what you did? Again, whether it was a leadership role on the board or if it was cleaning up after an event, bless you for that. Thank you for all that. But can you share with someone near you what your helping hands did this year? We'll have just about a minute for that. Well, you all have been busy this year. Good for you. Thank you for that. All right, now no pressure or anything. But what are 2 ways you could offer your helping hands in this next year coming up? You have some time to think over that over the summer, but just as you're sitting here listening to all these things that other people have done, knowing that religious education teaching classes are a huge and beautiful thing, like I said, no pressure. What are 2 ways you could offer your helping hands in this next year? Go ahead. I think there's some good ideas out there. Does anybody want to shout out 1 or 2? Got any ideas? I'm not writing it down, so.
Social justice.
Social justice. And holiday shop, yes.
Book sale.
And the book sale. Oh, I hear a call for the book sale. I wonder who it was who said to help with the book sale. The Pride Parade, yes. And Pride Sunday, yeah. Care team, yes. Tomatoes. I love it. Thank you. Awesome. All right. I would like to buy some tomatoes because we have a garden project going on here, and we have pumpkins and we have black beans sprouting. Did you know that? The kids planted some seeds just a couple of weeks ago during Children's Chapel, and they sprouted. I'm so excited. Now we just have to plant them in the ground. So, but we don't have tomatoes yet, so that is good, yeah. All right. You know there is something for you here. Whether it is to serve, whether it is to rest from serving, that's also a viable option, okay? That's why we do this together, so that sometimes we can lay it down and receive. I was thinking again about sometimes in the movies we have this particular picture of military life. And what I know from the very little that my dad told me about serving in Vietnam, he was a pilot or co-pilot, there was a lot of waiting. There was a lot of waiting, and then there was a sudden movement, action, go, go, go. And the one thing I do know about military folk is that there is a plan for how to get that thing done. There is a way to do it, and it gets done by this person. Each person has a role. They know what to do, and it gets done. We're working on that here, too. Here is a little different because who does what changes, and that's okay, and that is good. Every year, I preach so often on Memorial Day Sunday. I think it's often because settled ministers are often off this day, so itinerant preachers like me get called on. And I struggle with how to talk about Memorial Day. Because in Unitarian Universalist churches, we work for peace. But we know that there are people in the military here right now. A friend of mine who happens to be a Marine, she's a former Marine. She's also an ordained pagan priestess and a commissioned lay minister in Unitarian Universalism, and the current, as she calls herself, Grand Poobah of the Frederick Covenant of Unitarian Universalist Pagans, one of the largest and most active pagan groups on the East Coast, Unitarian Universalism. She wrote a Facebook post the other day in anticipation of Memorial Day, and I kind of wanted to throw out everything else I had written and just read that to you. With her permission, Irene Glass said I could share this particular piece of it. It's a reminder. Celebrate Memorial Day by living intentionally, consciously, and responsibly, and with the full understanding of the cost of our policies, both foreign and domestic. Patriotism rings hollow without civic responsibility. Honor their sacrifice, those people who served this country. Honor their sacrifice by building a nation worthy of it. Exactly. As Unitarian Universalists, we too have a vision of the world that could be. With love with a capital L at the center of all, and hands and hearts and minds to help. Let's get to work together.